Hello, and welcome to the National Franchise Show. I'm your host, Liane Caruso. Produced by the National Franchise Show, this podcast is your ultimate guide to finding the best franchise opportunities in the US and Canada. Today, I'm very excited to chat with Tamara Loring from the Entrepreneur Source. This is going to be a really great show because she's going to help us bust some myths about franchising. Welcome to the show, Tamara.
I am so excited to be here with you today, Leanne.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that our audience, who is primarily people looking for new franchise opportunities and exploring the world of franchising, are going to get a ton of value from what you have to share with us today. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we start busting some myths.
I would love to. Yes, Tamara Loring with the Entrepreneur Source. The Entrepreneur Source is a 40-year-old coaching firm, and our mission is to help people reimagine and reclaim the life of their dreams by learning about vehicles that have the potential to help them either generate the type of income they've always dreamt of, live the lifestyle that they were meant to live, and create wealth and equity for themselves and their family, perhaps even create a legacy. So I'm so excited today to help bust some myths here today, because we don't want some misguided beliefs prevent people from becoming the legend that they can be. So at today's episode, we've got a special giveaway, but let's get into it.
Yes, yes, very exciting. Okay, so we know that there's some common mistakes that you see with people looking for franchise opportunities. Working with a coach, which is what Entrepreneur Source does, how can you avoid some of these pitfalls? So by busting some of these myths, we're going to go through that. So you want to start with myth number one?
Sure. Yes, there are about seven myths that we have seen that really trip people up. Myth number one is, one of the things that we see, people think that finding the right business will make them successful. And, the thing that we want to challenge people on, it's not just the business that makes you successful. It is ultimately what you do with the business, right? So if you think about some of the most successful, let's say, franchise brands, right? Because people are coming here today listening about different franchise opportunities. What brand typically comes to mind, right? Usually we think about the quick service restaurants, right? McDonald's being a very popular one, but there's so many out there. And I always say, okay, great. Now, if you look at a McDonald's, would you believe that there are 20% that are exceeding any possible, projections that they made? Why is it? Then you've got the middle 60 and the bottom 20. Now, the bottom 20, why are they there? Maybe it's a new location. Maybe they're just starting out, right? But how is it possible if everybody has been given the exact same recipe and the exact same system and formula to follow, that the results may vary? So give yourself some credit. You bring something to the equation too. So yes, it's good to look at the business model, but don't think that all of your success is going to come from just selecting the right model. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, make perfect sense. So I think a lot of people come into franchising and they think, like you said, they want to own a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, and because that's like what they know to be franchising. But really looking into other things, like you probably don't go into franchising thinking, gosh, I really want to have a garage door repair franchise. But really that could be a really great financial opportunity for you that allows you to scale and grow and have multiple locations. So I think that's a great myth to bust.
And I think you actually led into myth number two, right? You mentioned garage doors, right? Who grows up thinking that is the business that I've always, always, always wanted to be in? That just
Right.
doesn't happen. So myth number two is people think that the secret to success is finding a career or a business doing something I love. Look, if you're going to look for true love, you may be searching your entire life and never finding it. And also, if you think about the counter, there's so many people who have turned their hobbies into a business because they love it so much. And are they successful? Not so much, right? Because there's more to a business than just doing what you know, love, and enjoy. As a matter of fact, I would challenge people to say that if you find a business or a vehicle that has the potential to generate the type of income that gets you excited, that gives you the flexibility to live the life that you want to live, right? You've got control over your schedule. That in the long term gives you the opportunity to build wealth, and equity for yourself, maybe something that you can sell eventually and cash out on, or maybe even pass on to your family and create a legacy that way, I promise you, even doors will get you excited because now you are living a life with purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into myth number 3.
Yeah. Myth number 3. I will know the right opportunity when I see it, right? You are so accustomed to these franchise shows, and something brings people to these live events, right? And then one of the things that I find amazing is when people walk up and down these aisles, rarely do they make eye contact. And I kind of wonder what is going on in their minds. How will they know the right opportunity when they see it? Is it going to be, I don't know, like an epiphany, right? The brand is just going to jump out at them. Is it going to be something in the logo? Like, how will they know the right opportunity when they see it, right? So I think the problem most of us have is we make an emotional connection with the brand instead of saying, okay, wait a minute, if they're at this franchise show and they're exhibiting this brand, right? What did the founding members see in this brand? What need were they fulfilling in the marketplace? And regardless of whether I have a love affair with the opportunity or not, I actually would encourage people to say, especially when you're like, no kidding, like, this is a business? How does this even work? Evoke that childlike curiosity to really seek to find out how this is a business, because one of the things I find fascinating, absolutely fascinating about franchising, and I feel like franchising is a myth within itself, right? Because people think franchising is typically fast food and French fries, and it really isn't. It is a method of doing business whereby you get to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And it spans all different industry sectors, right? So in order to become a franchise, you had to have proof of concept. Not only did you have to have proof of concept, you needed to be able to demonstrate to the FTC that it was replicatable and duplicatable. I'm not even sure whether that's proper English or not, but there had to be proof of concept, right? So when people come to these shows or as they're listening to this podcast, I would challenge everybody to say, wait a minute, in order for this to be a franchise concept, they needed to do all that. And they wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't feasible. Now, can you replicate it nationwide or worldwide? Well, that is what we need to figure out. So be curious, especially about the concepts that you feel like you cannot get excited about, or you're like, how on earth does this even work?
Yes, that's why I think like coaches, I know we call you guys career ownership coaches, which we're going
Coaches,
to
yeah.
go into in a little bit. But I think that that's why these kinds of opportunities are so good to work with a career ownership coach, because I think it presents opportunities that you hadn't thought of before, because you would never think like, oh, I would never love to be a painter or or have a painting business or an in-home senior care business, things that you would never have thought of, but really could be such a great opportunity for you. So
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, in our book, we refer to the porta potty business. We
yeah,
always say, who in their right mind wants to be in a crappy business like that, right? Again, I don't hear people saying, oh my gosh, once I'm done with school or once I have my higher education, I want to be the proprietor of a porta potty business. No, I've just never heard that. And yet, there are people in that business. And when you look at, the kind of wealth or equity they've been able to create for them and their families, right? Who cares how the money was made when you're flying first class? You think your banker cares? And I would dare to say that even though, yes, I don't think anybody loves the product or service, but there is a lot of satisfaction to be gained when you know that you're helping your community, when you are creating something of value. And when you do that, and when you're helping people and it checks all the boxes that are important for you, you get to love the business. So it may not have always been the dream. As a matter of fact, I like to say many people confuse the business with being the dream. For some people, the dream is the business, but for many of us, the business is simply a vehicle to the dream. So you're absolutely right, right? Once your mindset has been shifted, you will start seeing opportunities. I know my worldview has forever changed. I feel that there are so many opportunities out there. There's an abundance of opportunities out there. I just need to make sure that I don't suffer from what do they call it? SOS, shiny object syndrome, because there's so many things I possibly could be doing, but which ones are going to be the right ones for myself, my family, to make sure that it meets my goals, my needs, and expectations. Very different mindset from people who are, so battered and beat up by their career. We call it battered career syndrome or battered investor syndrome, working on their resumes, trying to see if they are still relevant in the current workplace, right? But everybody has a corporate expiration date. And those people feel like they're sending off their resumes in a black hole. They're questioning their relevance. They're questioning whether they still have value to add. And there doesn't seem to be any opportunity out there. And, by listening to this podcast, hopefully we can spark something for you to realize that maybe that book, Remember Who Moved My Cheese? Maybe somebody moved your cheese. There is opportunity, I promise you, but we may just need to look in a different direction, and we may just need a different mindset. And certainly one of the things that these myths are challenging us today is to, at the very least, keep an open mind, right?
Yeah.
And to see what could be out there.
Yes, love it. So as we go into myth number 4, this one I always liken to childcare or daycare opportunities, where people are like, well, do I need an educational background in order to open up a daycare, or that kind of thing. So tell us about myth number 4.
Yeah, myth number 4, right? People think, like you said, I cannot be in blankety blank business, right? Because I don't have blankety blank experience in this, right? So again, it goes back to that resume I was talking about, and the way we've been conditioned, from our early childhood, saying, work hard, go to school, get an education so that you can be this. And we put ourselves in that box, right? And we think, well, I cannot get a job or I cannot start a business unless I have experience in it. I don't know for you, Liane, but for me, oh my gosh, it was like mind blowing when I realized that that belief I had was wrong. And at first, I would challenge and resist business owners. And I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't love this business? Like, you weren't always head over heels in love? How, like, it was just such a foreign concept. And then when I dug deeper, and I'm like, so how long have you been doing this? Or what experience did you have in, this industry? And most franchise business owners said none. Doesn't that sound like a recipe for disaster? I mean, that is certainly not how corporate America works, right? And I looked, and then I started looking at the facts rather than being emotional about it. And I could see that, generally speaking, most franchised business owners, not only didn't they have prior experience, but they generally outperformed their independent counterparts, right? So if you look at whether you say childcare, right, somebody that's part of a proven system versus somebody who's figuring out the systems themselves, and there's just a lot of trial and error there. Now, in hindsight, it makes a ton of sense because there's a proven system. But initially, when you're new to that, it just seems like this simply cannot be true, and it's almost frustrating because you think somebody becomes a master at their craft, and yet somebody who's following a proven system outperforms them, right? And there's a lot more to it too. It's the national recognition, it's the community, it's so much more that goes into proven systems. But yeah, that is a reality. And I know my mind was blown when I came to that realization that, how to be so near and dear to my heart and what I believe to be true actually wasn't.
Right. So I think a lot of people, as we go into myth number 5, a lot of people think that if they're part of a franchise, then they don't really have any control. So they get to own their own business, but they're not really owning their own business. So bust that myth for us.
Yeah, sure. So look, franchising is not for everyone. If you're that maverick and you want to do things 100% your own way, then being part of a community and being part of a system is not for you. But franchising isn't as rigid as people think. Now, depending on the system, depending on the maturity, yes, right? So this is up to you to really make sure that you compare and contrast and see which one is going to be a good culture fit for you and which one is going to fit your temperament. But you know what, when I speak to even very successful entrepreneurs, they're like, oh my gosh, like the time and energy I wasted trying to figure things out and realizing that, I cannot be everything to everyone and I reach the ceiling of complexity. How nice would it have been if I could have plugged in to something? How nice would it have been if I could have realized that there's the collective wisdom of a team? Our founder will often refer to a rising tide raising all ships. And you know what? The other thing is, if the franchise is a good franchise, they actually have avenues for franchisees to participate, because really at the end of the day, it's the franchisees, the business owners who are in the trenches. It's they who see the opportunity for improvement. So there's never been a successful franchisor without successful franchisees, right? So if you think it's just going to be dictatorial or a strict hierarchy, some franchises maybe, but not all. There are actually a ton of even emerging brands, right, that really believe in this collaboration. I know this is very commonly used in franchising, but I believe it to be true. A wonderful franchise is one that creates an interdependent win-win-win relationship, right? Ultimately, we can never forget the people we serve. Secondly, right, it's kind of like a relationship or a marriage, right? The franchisor can only benefit if the franchisees benefit, and the franchisees can only benefit if the franchisor benefits. So it's that interdependent relationship. So I would say that is a myth if you believe that you have absolutely no opportunity to impact your community or the system. I've been part of a franchise system for over 22 years, and I wish I could tell you that I'm the one who comes up with the brilliant ideas, and it's never true, right? It's really listening to what our franchisees and the business owners are experiencing and really coming together and collaborating on how we can rise the tide for everybody.
Right. And there's franchise advisory councils that you could be a part of to help influence or impact decisions and bring ideas to the table, which I think rolls very nicely into myth number 6. I can't be creative in a franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, people have this idea that everything is so regimented and, all you need to do is execute, but you're absolutely right. Not only are there franchise advisory councils, I know about many concepts that have marketing teams or business development teams or IT teams that are working on initiatives to level up. I mean, if you look at some case studies, right, if you don't change and evolve with times, you become obsolete. What happened to Blockbusters? What happened to Kodak? What happened to some of those popular brands from the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, right? They failed to change. They failed to be creative and innovative, right? So absolutely, the beautiful thing is, in a franchise system, you actually get to be part of a community where you get to challenge each other. We love what we call healthy friction, because innovation by nature is going to take you out of your comfort zone. But the beautiful thing is, it doesn't need to be reckless, right? You could put up beta tests, you could pilot things to make sure that it has the intended outcome, right? And our franchisees get to be a part of that innovation. So there is so much creativity that happens in franchising, especially when you compare it, if you look at, again, independent businesses versus franchise businesses, many times, regardless of industries, those are the innovators of their industry.
I mean, I think the biggest example here isn't the Happy Meal come from a franchisee?
I believe you're absolutely right. I absolutely believe that to be true. Now, it
Okay,
doesn't mean that all ideas that a franchisee
right.
will have will be implemented. I also believe, I do believe this is a McDonald's case study where somebody said they wanted the pantyhose vending machines in the McDonald's. I don't know how you go to McDonald's. I don't go too often, but I've never seen one of those vending machines.
No.
That was an idea from a franchisee that didn't make it. Maybe it would have
Right.
made sense in that marketplace. So, but again, right, they protect the brand, they pilot it. Some things work out, some things don't, but Happy Meals for sure. And I believe the biscuit too came
Yeah.
from
Yep.
franchisees, and the breakfast menu.
Yeah, I love it. All right, we're to the final myth. Tell us what it is.
Yeah. So people have a lot of misconceptions about franchising. And because I think most of us think about the quick service restaurants, the fast food concepts, most people don't even take a second look at franchising because they believe franchises require way more money than they can afford, right? If I'm not a multimillionaire, I shouldn't even look at it. And that's absolutely not true. franchises are actually small businesses under an umbrella brand, right? So when you look at the concepts, there are emerging brands, there are mature brands, right? In my experience, money actually rarely is the issue. It's just people's perception of what it will take to go into business for yourself. Right now, granted, there are various different investment levels, but the way to think about businesses, it's not like you spend the money and it's gone. It is an investment. It should give you a return on investment. So look at it from that perspective and see what the different investment levels can generate for you. The other thing I love about franchising compared to, let's say, if you looked at an independent business, if you were to acquire or invest in an independent business, you basically have to trust that what the owners tell you is true, and that when it is sold, that the goodwill doesn't go with them, but that it's actually transferable, right? And there's risk associated with it. Not that there isn't risk associated with franchising, but the beautiful thing is you get to speak to franchisees, typically all over the country, and be able to really find out their situation. How long did it take them to ramp up? When were they cash flowing? Are they happy with their investment? Would they do it again, right? Was the value there? I mean, if you think about an independent business and all the aspects that you would need to focus on. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite books for anybody thinking about going into business is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, Why So Many Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It, right? Because people don't think about, some of the assets that they need to create. Generating and creating a website, marketing material, the infrastructure for whether it's a contact management system, the financial house. I mean, it can start adding up and up and up. And when you think about what it would cost, not just to research that, but to build that from scratch and implement it, many people feel that they actually waste a lot of money once they've done it. But when you're new to it, you're like, oh, I think I can do it cheaper. I think I can do it more effective for myself. So ultimately, really make sure that you understand the value that the franchise gives. And if it doesn't give an ROI for you, well, then it's not the right franchise for you, right? So yeah, generally, they're efficiencies to be had by being part of a bigger group, and that's whether you start off or even later on, right? If you were to purchase through the franchise, or depending on the kind of concept, there are economies of scale is probably the best way to say it.
Awesome. Well, those are all really, really good myths that I've heard time and time again with franchise opportunity seekers. So thank you for going through those. And I think you and I love franchising probably equally, like very passionate about business ownership. So tell us a little bit about TES, the Entrepreneur Source, and how you guys help or prospects or people who are looking to go into franchising, and kind of what makes you guys a little bit different than some of the other broker networks.
Well, one of the things that our founder discovered basically 40 years ago is that 75% of the adult population has a strong to very strong desire to want to be self-sufficient. But quite honestly, that is not the same as wanting to be in business for yourself or being self-employed. As a matter of fact, most people are scared to death about going into business for themselves, right? So what we realized is by creating a safe space and using a coaching methodology to really help people identify their purpose, call it their North Star, right? When your why is strong enough, the how and the what becomes self-evident, right? So some of these myths that we busted, hopefully helps people realize that, you don't necessarily need to be a maverick, an entrepreneur to actually be in business for yourself. I used to think that, right? I'm like, oh, I don't have a product or service that I want to take to the marketplace, therefore I cannot be an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurs come in all different shapes and sizes. And hopefully that is one of the things that you're taking away today, realizing that if there is a desire to want to be self-sufficient, give yourself permission to take advantage of our coaching methodology, where we can allow you to dream. We always say we'll work with you under two conditions: keep an open mind and make no decisions prematurely. We coach people to clarity. And quite honestly, the vast majority, after going through coaching, will decide that maybe business ownership is not right for them, or maybe franchising is not right for them. And that we celebrate that, because if you can do that with eyes wide open, we have enriched your life. And that's really what our coaching methodology does. So don't ever worry about wasting our time or you're not ready yet. That's why we're here. As a matter of fact, 95% of the people who end up in a business or franchise business by working through us end up in something completely different than they initially thought of, or something they had initially rejected, like let's say a porta potty business, right? Because that sounds crappy, and then realizing that maybe they were looking at it the wrong way. So yeah, this is the methodology that we've created, which kind of differentiates us from, I know you and I often speak about, the difference between a coach and maybe a broker. We really focus on the person who's not ready, willing, and able, and see whether there's some value there versus just trying to sell somebody a business. That's not what we're about.
Right. It's great. Okay. So for someone looking into franchising for the first time, which I'm sure is many of the listeners here, what advice would you give them in terms of what to prioritize when selecting a franchise?
Well, I certainly hope that these myths that we cover today cause our listeners to pause at least for a moment. The thought that probably resonates most strongly with me is, and I said this earlier in the show, just remember, usually the business is not the dream. For most of us, the business is the vehicle to your dream. So before we even start looking at whether this business is going to work or not, whether franchising is right for me or not, give yourself permission to identify your purpose, your North Star. And then once you have something that you can get excited about, then let's start looking at the pros and cons of all the various options. So that would be my single piece of advice. Start with your why.
That's great. I love what you just said about the business isn't the dream, it's the vehicle to the dream. That's really good.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know that you guys at Entrepreneur Source have a lot of resources that that people could go to. So would you mind sharing a few of those or a couple of those with us?
Well, the thing that brought us together here, Liane, right? First and foremost, the National Franchise Show is one of those amazing resources. When you do go to one of those shows, I just encourage you, instead of being one of those people walking up and down the aisle saying, nah, 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 dismissing things prematurely, turn it around. If you feel like dismissing it, say, let me be curious and figure out why this business has worked for others, and just be open to what you may find out, right? So the National Franchise Show is an amazing resource. This podcast and all the other resources are available to you. At the Entrepreneur Source, of course, we have resources too. First and foremost, I want to offer up this. We will never charge you for our coaching. So if you are serious about making meaningful change in your life, we are willing to invest in you if you're willing to invest in yourself. As a matter of fact, all you need to do is go and check us out. Go to yourcareerrevolution.com. And as a matter of fact, if you let us know that you heard about us through the NFS podcast, here's what we'll do for you. For a limited time, we will send you a complimentary copy, a free version of our Your Career Revolution book. So that is a great resource, a great starting point. We've got great worksheets in there. There's probably more, but I think this is enough for today. What do you think, Dan?
I love it. I love it. It's a great book. I actually own it and have read it. So I'm a franchise nerd, but yeah, that's a great opportunity for people to at least get started. Go to the website, yourcareerrevolution.com. Get a free copy of the book and talk to a coach at zero investment on your part other than your time and your energy to start exploring new opportunities. I love it. Thank you so much, Tamara.
It was an absolute honor and privilege to be here with you today. Thank you.
It's so great. Thank you. And go visit that website, and we'll be in touch very soon. We hope today's episode has provided you with valuable insights into the exciting world of franchising and the unique opportunities available to you. Remember, becoming a franchisee is a journey that starts with the right information and the right brand. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with others who might be interested in starting their own business. Stay tuned for more episodes where we bring you more franchise brands and more opportunities to help you find your perfect fit. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit franchiseshowinfo.com. Until next time, this is the National Franchise Show, helping you turn your entrepreneurial dreams into reality.